Herkese merhaba. So thank you, Azagul, for your introduction. I'm sure at least half of it was true. And I also want to really thank Ali Yurtsever for bringing me to this conference, to ICT. I feel like really there's a bridging of two worlds that's happening. Usually I speak at very grassroots kinds of events, but occasionally somebody invites me to speak at something very mainstream and very official. And I feel sometimes a little awkward, you know. Sometimes I'll be the only person in the whole room not wearing a necktie. And there's a little voice inside of me that says they must have made a big mistake. And a little voice inside me that says, Charles, the reason you're not wearing a necktie is because you're not very important. And look at all of these other people who are very important because they've been given a necktie to wear as the badge of their importance. And you haven't made it in that world. So there's this voice, but then I also find that more and more people in that world are not very happy with their lives there. And they're sensing that that world maybe is going to change. It's going to change a lot very soon. And they're very curious to expand their understanding of the world and their understanding of what's real and to reach out to other worlds. So I think that as the crisis of civilization grows, that it's not just a bridging of worlds, but it's worlds coming together. I think it's going to happen more and more. So 2 days ago, I talked a lot about, or a little bit about development. And many of you weren't here, but one of the things I talked about was the whole idea of Turkey as a developing country and what that means, developing. It means that someday you'll be like me. Someday you'll be like us. Someday you'll have big traffic jams and big houses and lots of cars, and you're halfway there already. And someday you'll be like we are, because we're developed and you're developing. And I pointed out that contrary to Hollywood images, the destination of America is not a happy place, but it's a place of worse and worse health, poverty, the division between the wealthy and the poor, crime, alienation, boredom, and just kind of a general unhappiness that's coming at the price of the ecosystem around the world. And so, you know, the misery of people all over the world. You know, maybe if we were really becoming happy that way, it would be worth it. Maybe if it's true that life is just a big competition and there's going to be winners and losers. And so you better try hard to be one of the winners. And if the losers are suffering, the losers being people in Africa, people in South America, people in Cambodia, the forests, the oceans, the lakes, the rivers, the animals, the plants, they're the losers. Well, too bad, but sorry, that's just the way it is, right? Because we're the winners. Maybe you could justify that, but what's becoming more and more obvious is that the winners aren't even the winners either. the paradise that we're pursuing, when you get there, you find that it's not a paradise, but it's a hell. You can tell that when you look at fashion models. Has anyone ever noticed, when you look at fashion models, that they're always unhappy? Like, you never see a fashion model with like a big smile, you know? The fashion models are always like, they look a little bit bored, a little bit angry. And I think that's, because here is the image of beauty that we're offering as an example. I mean, a fashion model is basically saying, if you wear these clothes, you will be like me. If you buy this brand, you will be like me. Well, what are we offering as the destination? Boredom, anger, cynicism. So you can see that there's a big problem with the vision of success and the vision of development that we're offering. So anytime that you ask, why is it turning out this way? It's very hard to avoid the topic of money. If you ask, why are all these terrible things happening in the world? Why are we cutting down the forests everywhere? Why are some of the beautiful old neighborhoods in Istanbul being torn down to build shopping malls and hotels? Like, why? And you ask why, and very soon, you don't have to ask very long, very soon you get to the answer, well, somebody's making money from it. The same thing, many people ask the same question in their own lives. They say, well, there's this really beautiful thing I want to do in the world. I want to help orphans. I want to help the hungry. I want to plant forests again. I want to protect something that's beautiful. I want to protect these old neighborhoods in Turkey. I want to protect traditional villages. I want to save the whales. I want to save the elephants. I want to do all these beautiful things. But nobody wants to pay me to do these beautiful things. And instead, what does somebody want to pay me to do? They want to pay me to do things that I really don't care about very much. Why is this? So this is the basic question that I ask on the first page of my book. I ask, why is money the enemy of a more beautiful world? Why should it be this way? Because money is just a human creation. Money only has power because we agree that it has power. Everybody in society invests it with value. Because on a physical level, money is nothing but bits in computers, right? It's nothing but pieces of paper with symbols on them. Why are these so powerful? It's because we have a story, an agreement that gives them power. So we create it. And the question then is, why have we created money to be something that's the enemy of a more beautiful world and the enemy of our heart's desires? Why? If it's just an agreement, we could change that agreement, couldn't we? And that seems very hard. How can we change this agreement that's so pervasive? Most people don't even know that it's an agreement. Most people think that money is, there it is, and it's always there, and it's always going to be there, and it never can change, and that's the way it is. It's part of the physical world almost, they think. Just like rocks and clouds. I mean, money, it's real, right? But it's not. It's something that we create and that we could change. And we have an opportunity to do that very soon, because the money system is falling apart around the world. It's in a state of crisis. And as it falls apart, new ideas, new agreements, new stories have the opportunity to emerge. I'm going to share with you a little story. But first, before I share the story, I'll just give you a little map of what I want to do today. I'm not going to talk for 2 hours. That's an awful long time. But I'm going to talk for a while, maybe 1 hour, maybe a little less. And then I'm going to invite you into a conversation with each other. And we're also going to do questions and answers and things like that. Because really, I mentioned this 2 days ago, like in a different kind of world, this model, one person up here, everybody down there, that's feeling a little bit obsolete. You know, this is a setup from the old world. So, well, maybe people don't know this, but I used to be in the IT field also, in the information technology field. When I was in my 20s, maybe 27 years old. I was living in Taiwan, Taipei, Taiwan, and I was a consultant for software companies, computer companies who wanted to bring their products to the American market. And so I would help them localize their products. And I was really good at it. You know, I was a translator, and I got paid lots of money, and I was in these meetings, corporate meetings, you know. And I remember one meeting, I was sitting around the table, and the other people at the meeting were very enthusiastic about some new technology that was going to be part of their product. I don't remember what it was. Maybe it was 3D sound or something like that. So you'd be able to hear sounds that would be, and they would sound like they were going, you know, moving around and stuff, and this big deal. You know, everybody's really excited about it. And I looked around, and I thought, wait a minute here. You guys actually care about 3D sound? Because I'm just pretending to care. I'm just pretending to care because you're paying me to. But I don't really care. So I felt like I had several feelings at the same time. One feeling was I hate to admit it, but I felt a little superior. Like I get it and you don't, right? I also felt a little lonely because am I the only different one here? I felt kind of alone in my world. I felt maybe there's something wrong with me for not caring. Maybe I should care, but I'm not, and what's wrong with me? That was the second thing I felt. The third thing I felt was terror, fear. And the fear was, when do I get to do something that I care about for real? Or do I spend my whole life caring about things just because I'm paid to care about them? Do I ever get to live my life? Or the life that I'm paid to live? And I think many people have had this experience. Maybe it was when you were in school, or maybe at a job, where you have the feeling, I wasn't put here on earth to do this. I was put here on earth to do something magnificent. I was put here on earth to do something special. And that feeling can become a very lonely feeling when it contradicts everything that you're being told about what life is. And it contradicts, well, you have to make a living. And it contradicts the system of rewards in our society called money. And it contradicts even survival. Maybe if you don't play along with that game, maybe you won't even have enough money to eat. So it can be a lonely feeling. So that's why, I guess that's one reason why I've become very interested in how the money system works and what it is about money that makes it into the enemy of a more beautiful world and a more happy, fulfilling life. So I'd like to explain to you how money works and why it has these effects. And to do that, we'll imagine that we're going to play a little game here, okay? So the game is called bank, okay? And I will be the bank, all right? So what I'll do, so imagine that this room is the whole world, and I'm the bank, and so this is how money gets created, okay? Money today, it's not printed really by the government. Money is created through lending. Either the central bank purchases securities and brings money into existence, or on the consumer level and the business level, banks lend money to consumers and businesses. And when a bank lends money, it doesn't take money from somewhere else and give it to another person. When a bank lends money, the bank creates new money just with a few strokes of a computer keyboard. Basically, I mean, there's some, I'm giving you a simplified version, okay? But the simplified version gives you an accurate understanding. So I'm the bank, and I create all the money in the room, all the money in the world. And I'm going to create 1 million lira for every person in the room. Every person gets 1 million lira as a loan. And you can use it however you want. You could use it to build a factory or a bakery or anything you want. But there's a condition. You have to pay me back someday. And you have to pay me back more than just 1 million lira, right? So say, because the loan is at interest. So say in 10 years, maybe you have to pay me back 2 million lira, okay? But that's okay, no problem, because you're a very smart person. You are going to use that million lira to build a bakery, and you're going to sell Turkish delight to everybody else in the room, and you're going to earn 3 million lira. And you're going to pay me back 2 million, and you're going to have 1 million for yourself, and you're going to get rich, right? No problem. The problem, you may see the problem already, the first problem. And there is a solution to this problem, okay? But the first problem is that now everybody only has 1 million lira, but everybody owes me 2 million. So there's more money owed to me than there is money in existence. That means that everybody in this room is in competition with everybody else for never enough money. Where is the extra money going to come from? Where are you going to get your extra million? You're going to make it from somebody else, or take it from somebody else, or steal it from somebody else, but you have to get it from somebody else. And everybody is in the same position. And that means, if nothing else changes, that means in 10 years, half of you must go bankrupt. And the rules of our little game say that if you go bankrupt, you lose everything you have. Your house, your car, probably you'll lose your job. And for the rest of your life, all of your income has to come to me. All of your extra income has to come to me, okay? So you don't want to go bankrupt. Everybody's under pressure. So that means everybody is in competition. Even if you're a nice person, you don't want to be in competition, you're forced into competition because of the way money is created. Now, in the real world, and there's never enough. And so the more that we live in the money world, the more we live in a world of never enough. It's not just never enough money. It's also never enough time, never enough love, never enough of anything. And you'll see in traditional parts of Turkey, maybe in the old villages, where money is not as big a factor in life. In those places, that scarcity, that anxiety is less present. People are more at ease with time, probably. They're less in a hurry. They can take it slow. So you can see how this factor of how money is created, how it affects our lives. Now, the story's not done, okay? Because by the time 10 years comes by and everybody has to pay me back 2 million lira, by that time, you don't have to go bankrupt, because by that time, I will have created even more. I will lend even more money. So there will be enough to pay back the original loans. But when I create more money, that comes with even more debt. But that's okay. When the new debt comes due, I will have created even more money with more debt. But that's okay, okay? So as long as the system keeps growing and growing and growing forever, it kind of works. Now, who do I create money for? If someone comes to me and says, please give me another $1 million because I really need to pay back my loans and my children are hungry, will I give you another $1 million? No. It's not based on need. The person I will give another $1 million to is the person who says, I've got a great business idea. I'm going to sell things to other people, and I'm going to do it better than other people are. And then I say, oh, very good. You have a good business plan. I will lend you this money. So here's the law of money in our system. Money goes to the person who will make even more of it. If you come to me and your business plan is that you're going to protect an old neighborhood in Istanbul from development, I'll say, well, that sounds nice, but what are you going to sell? What are you going to sell? But if someone else comes to me and says, my business plan is to knock down all those old buildings and build a hotel, then what are you going to sell? Well, I'm going to sell rooms in this hotel. I'm going to sell commercial space. I'm going to sell something, right? Same thing with, I know that in Turkey there's a lot of hydroelectric development. So if your business plan is to build a big dam and flood farmland that's been cultivated for 6,000 years, okay, there's money for you. But if your business plan is to stop a dam and protect the ancient way of life, then there's no money for you, okay? So this is just, and I really have no choice as the bank. I can't just lend to people who aren't going to pay me back. My bank will go out of business. The bank regulators will shut me down. So we have a system where you don't even need any bad guys. You don't have to blame anybody. It's just the way the system works. And you take a perfectly good person and you put them in that position, and that's all of us. And it brings out our greed. It makes us greedy, it makes us competitive, it makes us suspicious of each other, because we look around and even if we don't know it consciously, we know the rules of the game. Everybody's trying to get money from me somehow. So suspicion is built into social relationships. And that's very different from a non-money economy. It's very different from a gift economy, in which the wealth of one person actually contributes to the wealth of another person. Maybe I'll talk a bit more about that in a few minutes. I just want to finish this story here. So basically, the system that we have today necessitates growth, and it pushes growth. It says, you have to find something new to sell. You have to make this money because you're under pressure. You're under survival pressure. You're under debt pressure. You have to find a job. You have to contribute to finding new things to sell people. What are some new things to sell people? Well, you could find something in nature that is free or that nobody's buying, say oil under the ground, and you could dig it up, pump it out, cut it down, dig it out, right, and make it into a product and sell it. So you can take nature and convert it into a product. Or another way to make money is you can find something that people do for each other and professionalize that and make it into a service. On Tuesday, I mentioned a few examples. So in the old days, nobody paid money to have a conversation, right? In your grandmother's village, nobody paid money to have a conversation. Nobody paid money for the news because you would go and people would talk about what was happening. Nobody paid money for play. Children never had to pay for video games. They went outside and they played. Nobody had to pay money for exercise. There were no gyms. Nobody had to pay money for music because half the people were musicians. Most people could sing, could play instruments. Nobody had to pay for dance. People would dance. They didn't have to go to a disco. Nobody had to pay money for cooking because people lived in extended families. And grandmother or mother or auntie, somebody would be doing the cooking for many people. Nobody had to pay money to fix your house because everybody knew how to fix a house. Now, today in America, it's actually illegal to fix your own house for some things. You have to pay a licensed electrician or a licensed plumber. You can't just help each other do these things necessarily. So here's a business plan. Maybe some of you want to get rich, okay? Here's a business plan. You find something that people do for each other or for themselves. You take it away, and then you sell it back to them. For example, water. A generation ago, did anybody pay for drinking water? That was inconceivable. Even in America, there was no bottled water. Only the very rich might have Perrier, in a fancy restaurant. But ordinary people, we never bought water. You just turn on the tap, You don't have to buy it. And I'm sure it was the same here. But now, we take it away. How do you take it away? You pollute the water system, or you scare people, or you create an image of, a smart person buys water and only a primitive person drinks out of the faucet. A modern person uses infant formula. Only a stupid peasant will breastfeed. A modern person sends their children to daycare. Only a backward person tries to educate them at home. A modern person wears makeup. Only an ignorant person goes without makeup. A modern person wears the right brands, the right clothes. Okay, so we can basically take away people's self-esteem, take away their identity, and then sell it back in the form of brands, in the form of products. And this is what happens all around the world. When Hollywood movies come in, Western TV programs that show a certain image of glamour, an image of wealth, an image, a lifestyle, and they say, the way you're living is wrong. But you can buy the right way to live. And so people don't feel good about themselves. And it's a very complicated process. It involves, for example, replacing people's explanation for the world with science. It involves destroying traditions, destroying customs, destroying religion, destroying the day-to-day relationships that tell you who you are. The relationship to the people around you, the relationship to the stories that you're brought up with. Like every culture, you tell stories to children. And these stories become part of who you are. Every culture, traditional culture, you know the people around you. In a small village, everybody knows everybody else, and everybody knows the land, and everybody knows the story of every person that they ever see. But today we're living in, because of, see, this is not a conscious plot, okay? There's not some evil person who's saying, I'm going to take it away and sell it back to you. This is just the way it works. But so living in a mass society with division of labor, specialization, we don't know the stories of the people around us anymore. And you go outside, and every face that you see is a stranger. And you don't know their stories. They don't know your story either. That's actually an unusual experience for a human being. Until recently, most people spent their whole lives with people that they knew. And if you're known so well, then you know yourself too. Because identity is a social creation. You take away people's identity, and then you can sell it back in the form of brands, consumer products. Okay, so you get the point, right? Find something that people do for each other or get from nature for free, some skill, some relationship, take it away and sell it back again, and you can become rich. The problem, okay, and so the system works as long as the world of goods and services, products, as long as it's growing and growing and growing, the system kind of works. The money system works because even though debt is growing, I can keep lending new money to you to pay back the debts. And the new money has more debt, but that's okay because you're going to even make more and more and more money because you're going to find something in nature and make it into a product, some relationship, make it into a service. It works, okay? The problem, though, is that we're running out of things to convert into products, into goods and services. The planet cannot take endless growth forever. We can't keep turning nature into commodities. And human communities can't take much more either. There's not much more to pay for. And this happens periodically in history when we run out of room for growth. As soon as, so here I'm the bank, and now nobody has a good business plan. Nobody can tell me, here's how I will pay you back 2 million lira. So I stop lending. Credit freezes. And when I stop lending, then bankruptcies rise, the debt-to-income ratio rises. I'm not lending, so people aren't creating employment anymore, and the whole system falls apart. How do we rescue the system? The only way to rescue it is to find some more growth somehow. Find some way to keep the system growing. One way is with technology. For example, telecommunications. Technology allowed something to become a product that wasn't a product before. Something to become a service, okay? Another way is through warfare. We can destroy things with bombs and then rebuild them again and create new growth. Another way is with colonization. So, say I'm America, I can find another country, maybe Turkey, that has still many relationships that are based on gift relationships and has a lot of community. And I say, here's an undeveloped market. I'm going to make you guys start paying for everything. And through the world financial system, your growth, do you benefit from that? No, I'm going to import the benefits to my country. I'm basically importing growth and keeping the system working a little longer. So the crisis that we're seeing today is really a crisis in growth. And there's more to the story too. Increases in productivity make the necessity for growth even more intense. But I'm not going to go into too much of that. So we're facing a crisis in growth, and we can't have, and all of the ways that we used to solve the problem are limited. We can't have as much war anymore. War between the great powers is becoming impossible because of nuclear weapons. We're running out of room for colonization, and technology is bumping up against the ecological limits of the earth. So when growth slows down, the system goes into crisis, and it's a crisis that will not go away. The financial elites, the politicians, do not understand this. They still think that, well, we just have to get the economy growing again. But it's not working. None of their tools are working anymore. None of the financial tools, the monetary tools. They've brought interest rates down near zero, but lending still isn't happening. So the system is in a big crisis here. So I'm going to speak a little bit about the alternative, a little bit about where we're going. Because a crisis, you could say, yeah, it's the end of the world. Everything's going to be changing. And everything that seemed so real and so permanent, we're going to discover that it's not, that it's just an illusion. It's just something that we've created through our agreements. Money. I mean, there used to be nothing as real as AAA rated bonds and blue chip stocks. That was the essence of practicality, to put your trust in those things. That was the essence of practicality. Or the US dollar, right? That was as reliable as you could get. But now we're seeing maybe not. So this crisis, I see the crisis as a birth crisis. The old world has to fall apart for the new world to be born. This is how change works. And this is the moment that we're nearing. So it is a little scary, but we're also filled with great hope, because I think everybody has the sense that the world is supposed to be different and better and more beautiful. And I don't know about you, but when I contemplate big changes, big crisis, when I contemplate that, I feel fear, but I also feel some excitement. There's part of me that says, yeah, bring it on. Let's have everything change. Or am I the freak here? Let me just then, so yeah, I'm going to tell you a little bit about where this crisis can take us by contrasting the money economy to the economy of gift. So in a money economy, here's something that's true. More for you is less for me, right? We're all in competition for 2 million lira each, but there's not that much. So if you get more of it, then that's less for me. We're all in competition. Now, compare that to a traditional Anatolian village. Or a hunter-gatherer tribe, okay, thousands of years ago. In all ancient societies, if you had a lot of possessions, those would become a burden to you, especially for a nomad, a hunter-gatherer who's a nomad, traveling around, like you have to carry your possessions. But also for a farmer, if you have a granary full of wheat and you just keep it, it's going to go bad. Rats were going to eat it. It's going to go moldy. So how do you maintain your wealth when wealth decays and wealth is a burden? The way you maintain your wealth is that you become very generous. You give to everybody around you very generously. And then, and this isn't just because you're a nice person, okay? Because, well, partly it's because you're a nice person and you like the people around you and you feel generous and you want to give, but also, the more that you give, the more people feel gratitude towards you, the more they feel obligation towards you. So if you have some hardship, if you have a bad harvest one year, if you lose your son, if you break your leg, if your family gets sick, then everybody's going to want to take care of you too. So in a gift system, security comes from how much you give, not from how much you control, not from how much you have. It comes from how much you give. So that means that if you have some good luck, if you have a good harvest, if you have many healthy sons and many beautiful daughters, your good fortune is my good fortune too, because that means you're going to have more to give to me. And it's no longer true that more for you is less for me. It's true that more for you is more for me. It's true that what happens to you is happening to me. This is something that religious teachers have been telling us for a long time, but we've misunderstood it. But they've been saying that what you do to the world is going to matter for you somehow. You're actually doing it to yourself. Okay. Ancient people saw the universe in terms of gift. They understood ecology. In ecology, everything that one species creates benefits another species. The waste of one species is food for another species. And if you remove any species from an ecosystem, then everybody is weaker. That's the importance of biodiversity. Scientists used to not understand this. They used to think that, well, some species are beneficial and some species are harmful and some are neutral, and we can make the world better. We can make the world better if we get rid of the harmful species and keep the beneficial ones. But now we're learning that if you remove even one species, everything gets weaker. If you take away the lions, right? Lions are bad, right? They eat the sheep and everything, but you take them away and then the deer become too many and they eat all of the shrubs, all of the seedlings, and then eventually one thing leads to another, and pretty soon the trees are dying and a desert is spreading. In the Middle East, there used to be no deserts. The Sahara Desert didn't used to be a desert only 5,000 or 6,000 years ago. Even in Roman times, there was a lot of grain grown in North Africa. The Greek islands used to be covered in forests, every single one of them covered in forests. And of course, Iraq used to be the most fertile land in the world. And all of it, you could say, has been converted into money, just like the myth of King Midas, where his touch turns everything to money. That's what our interest-based system does. And I think that in most religions, actually, there are prohibitions against interest, against usury. In Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, they understood that there's something really bad about interest. It's contrary to the spirit of the gift, because it says, well, I'll let you use this money, but only if you give me even more back. And if you don't, then I will sue you. I will take it. Right? That's not a gift. It's contrary to the spirit of the gift. So this gift understanding of the universe is growing now in us as we understand ecology, as we understand that humanity can only survive because of the gifts of nature. And if we take too much and we don't give back, then humanity will not survive. We need the forests to make our air. We need the soil, and we need the water, and we need all of life for us to be happy also, for us to be secure. It's just like in a gift culture. More for you is more for me. Less for you is less for me. What I do to you, I'm doing to myself as well. We're understanding that this is universally true. But we have a money system that denies this truth, which is why we need to transition into a different kind of money system that no longer violates the principles of the gift. And so I talk about this on a systemic level. I also talk about it on a community level and on a personal level. Action and change is necessary on every level because we are so used to living in a money world that the habits of money, they've gotten into our brains, they've gotten into our bones. We're used to seeing the world as a place of scarcity, a place of competition, a place of distrust, a place of more for you is less for me, competition. And we need to begin changing these habits. So I'd like to, I'm going to talk about some of the system level stuff too, because here I am in Turkey, which is an Islamic country, and I think that some of the teachings of Islam, especially regarding finance and banking and stuff, can be actually very useful in creating a new system. There's some wisdom there that I think is important. So I am going to talk a little bit about that, but I'd also like to engage you more on a personal level. I mean, here I've been standing up here by myself talking for a long time. So I think, and even a couple of people are sleeping, which makes me feel a little arrogant, you know, like, I mean, how would you feel like if you're talking to somebody and they fall asleep and you keep talking and then they wake up and like, you're like, why am I doing this? So I'd like to invite you into a conversation with each other. Part of the psychological transition is a different way of seeing yourself and your purpose in life. A different answer to the question, why am I here? Like, why are you here? What's the purpose of life? Actually, you know what? Right now, I'd like everybody to turn to somebody next to you and take 1 minute each, so 2 minutes altogether, 1 minute each, to share with your neighbor, what is the purpose of life? Why is a human being here? Maybe not your purpose of life, but it's a philosophical question. What is the purpose of life? Okay? And when I raise my hand, that's the signal for everyone to be quiet, and I'll say some more things. So please, have a conversation. And make sure you both have a turn. Both have a turn. Yeah. I wonder what it would be like if we had a conference where everybody just has 30 conversations about this all day. And with each conversation, your understanding grows about what the purpose of life is. And with each conversation, you bring in somebody else's wisdom. That might be a good conference. Okay, so what's the purpose of life? Why are you here? Our culture, our civilization tells us an answer. It tells us a very poisonous answer. The answer it tells us is that the purpose of life is just to survive. There really is no purpose of life. Science tells us that answer because what science says about you, about what a self is, what it is to exist, it says what you are is this separate piece of matter with lots of little pieces inside that are governed by the laws of physics and the laws of chemistry. So you're basically a machine made out of meat. And science says this machine is programmed by your genes, and they program you to survive and reproduce. That's your nature. You're a separate being among other separate beings in a world that's separate from you too. And in general, religion agrees with this. It says, yeah, you're a separate soul inside a body that's separate from you, and there's other separate souls out there in this world that's material and separate from you. And you really don't have anything to do with the world, really, it's just temporary. Psychology has agreed also. You're kind of this ego, this consciousness encased in flesh. They all agree. And you can see that that basic answer already is aligned with money. It says, you're separate from me, so of course more for you is less for me. Of course, the more I have, the less you have, because we're separate and the world is separate from us. So you can see how deep the change is that we are going through. The money system, which is a product of separation, will not change unless our answer to who am I and why am I here changes also. That is what's changing today. That is why we feel that the crisis is so important. That's why we feel that everything's changing. It's not just some little thing. It's not just, a different political party. It's not just changing, the money system. I mean, the change is going all the way to what it is to be human. And part of that is a different answer to the question, why am I here? The new answer is no longer, I am here for me. I am here to survive, to reproduce, to maximize my self-interest. That's what economics says. Economics says that human behavior is driven by the desire to maximize rational self-interest. But it's wrong. And it's becoming more and more wrong, because I meet more and more people who they're at the top of the game and they can't stand it anymore. They're doing great as far as maximizing their wealth, but they can't stand it anymore. They want to get out because they feel like there's more to life than this, just like I did when I was 27. The purpose of life, if we're not actually separate beings, but if you're part of me and I'm part of you, and all of humanity is brothers and sisters, then the purpose of life is to give. The purpose of life is to be in service. To be in service to something bigger than yourself. And that's not a self-sacrifice. That's only a self-sacrifice if we're separate. But it's not a self-sacrifice if we're connected, because more for you is more for me. What I give to you, I'm giving to myself too. Everybody becomes better off. And this is something, actually, even in the money world, it's true. Anyone who tries it, anyone who lives in the spirit of service will have a magical life. A beautiful life. And wonderful things happen. Miracles happen. The more that you step into the spirit of giving. But we have a lot of habits that keep us away from that. And we have a money system that keeps us away from that. So we need to begin thinking about ourselves and thinking about the purpose of life in a different way, through the lens of the gift. So how would it change your world? How would it change your life? To understand yourself as the bearer of gifts. To understand that, yeah, I am here to give something. And it's something necessary. In an ecosystem, remember, every species has a necessary gift to give and a unique gift to give. You take away one species and no other species can quite substitute for that niche. It's unique. The same is true in the social ecosystem. Every person has a unique gift to give that's necessary for the well-being and for the evolution of all of society and even for the whole planet. You're here for a reason. This is something that everybody can feel. This is why when you're in that situation like I was when I was 27, that's why you feel I wasn't put here on earth to do this. You know, haven't you ever had that feeling? I wasn't put here on earth to do this. I'm supposed to be doing something useful. I'm supposed to be serving the well-being of all. So this is one important aspect of the transition that we're going through. It's to begin to see ourselves as bringers of a gift. I am here to give. I'll give you one more piece of evidence, and then I'll invite you into another conversation. I mentioned it on Tuesday, I think, actually. But I'll say it again because many of you weren't here. The reason that all of us feel compelled to give, people want to give so much, and we don't have much of a chance. But I find, like, in Istanbul, if I ask anybody directions, how do I get to the hotel? Like, people are so happy to tell me, point me, and they're happy. They'll even walk with me, One of you walked with me all the way from the train station to the hotel. Thank you for that. And like, when someone gives you directions, they don't get anything in return, do they? You don't pay them money. Nobody's even watching them be generous. They don't even get any social benefit from it. It's a pure gift. But people are delighted to do that, and you're delighted to do that. When you do that, you feel good. There, he walks away, and, you feel good, right? We all have a compulsion to give, but we don't have opportunities to give because we're locked in a money system. We do have opportunities, but they're hard to see. The system puts a veil in front of our faces, and we don't experience having a lot of opportunities to give. And that's one reason why I'm so enthusiastic about Zumbara, because those folks are creating opportunities to give, and therefore opportunities to feel joy and to feel aligned with purpose. So the reason that we feel compelled to give is because we ourselves have received so much. When you receive something, you feel gratitude. Gratitude is the knowledge that you've received and the desire to give in turn. What have we received? We've received everything. Life. Life is not something we earned. You didn't earn being born. You didn't earn being fed as a baby and taken care of and held. It's a lot of work to take care of babies, right? A lot of work. And when your son or daughter turns 18, are you going to give them a bill? Services rendered, right? No, that's a gift. We're only here because we've received gifts. Our lives, our breath, everything, the world, water. We didn't earn water. We didn't earn soil. We didn't earn any of this. So all of life is a gift. And having received this gift, we have a desire in our bones, in our blood, to give in return. And it's impossible to be happy otherwise. Now, I'm not trying to tell you that you're not already giving your gifts. I'm not trying to tell you that if you work in the IT sector, then you're not really giving your gifts. You can recognize whether or not you're giving your gifts toward a good purpose by how you feel about your work. It's a feeling of excitement. It's a feeling of happiness, a feeling of fulfillment. And the proper expression of your gifts will change over time. So you might find yourself in a new job, and it's really exciting, and you're discovering talents that you never knew before, and you're doing exciting things, and you're growing, and then after a few years, you feel differently. And maybe that means it's time for a new gift to blossom. I find that many people who come to my events are in that moment where there's a change that wants to happen. Or maybe it's already happening. Or maybe it happened recently. But people are in a transition state. maybe less in Turkey than other places because there's such strong economic growth, and it seems like the world is working pretty well, maybe. At least you can pretend that it is for a little while. Maybe not. Yeah, I mean, I think you can see on the horizon that all is not well in the world. Just looking over the sea to Greece and wondering, when's that going to come here? Anyway, so I'd like to now invite you into another conversation. And so I'd like you to share with somebody next to you what gifts do you bring? Might be a little awkward because it might feel like you're boasting. It might feel like you're bragging about yourself. But this gift, you can't actually take credit for it. All of your gifts were given to you. So share with your partner maybe 2 or 3 of the gifts that you have that you can give forward to create a more beautiful world. And I'll give you a little bit more time this time, maybe 2 minutes each. Okay, so take turns and enjoy this conversation. There's a lot more of this stuff, but I want to leave some time for questions and answers and things. And I think maybe before I go into questions and answers, I'll talk about just one little piece of the systems level. And I really don't know who's in the room and really what the areas of interest are, but I'll mention one small thing. My book is mostly about the systems level. I'd say about 2/3 about economic systems, money systems, and really practically, on a society-wide level, what we can change, what we can move into. So I'll give you one little piece of it. In a gift culture, remember, wealth does not come from keeping and hoarding. If you keep and hoard, then your wealth decays, right? The rats eat it. It gets moldy, it gets dusty, it rusts. Thieves steal it, and it disappears. And you only can stay wealthy by giving. Now, this property of wealth, that it decays unless you give it away, unifies humans with nature, because in nature it's also true that everything decays with time. Nothing is permanent in nature. But today we have something that is permanent, something that doesn't decay, something that's different from everything in nature, and that's called money. Money doesn't decay. Money even grows with time. And we can talk about inflation. But if you have enough money, you can invest it at interest that's higher than the inflation rate. So you could say that money is an exception to this law of nature. And when we attach ourselves to money, my money, and we associate money with security and money with self, then it's like we're pretending that we can be permanent just like our money. And it makes us feel separate from nature, and it makes us behave as if we were separate from nature. So one of the things I talk about in my book is the idea of changing that so that money, like everything else, decays. If we're in a gift culture and I have, there's maybe 200 people here, say I have 200 loaves of bread, okay? And say that I'm actually a selfish person. I'm a bad person. And I have 200 loaves of bread in a big pile here. Even if I'm a bad person, I'm not going to keep my bread because it'll go stale. I would much rather give everybody in the room a loaf of bread because it goes stale. And I can say, here's a fresh loaf of bread. And when I'm hungry, I will ask you for a fresh loaf of bread. So that's called a zero interest loan. But we don't do that with money. No one says, I've got too much money right now. Why don't you use it for a while? And when I need it, I'll ask you, you can give it back. Right? That's a zero interest loan. We don't do that with money. Why? Because money's not like bread. But if money were like bread, then a zero interest loan would become quite normal. So one of the proposals that I talk about is to make money like bread. And the way it would work is that banks have deposits in the central bank, and those deposits would have a negative interest rate, a liquidity tax, so that if the bank keeps its money in the central bank and doesn't lend it to anybody, then it will decay, maybe by 5% a year. So if you have 1 billion lira in the bank, after a year it's only 950 million, after another year it's just over 900 million, and so forth. So that bank now would rather lend it out, even at zero interest, than to keep the money there. So it allows money to circulate, even if you don't have a business plan that you're going to make even more and give it and pay me back. All you have to do is meet the existing needs. You don't have to create new needs in society. It allows the money system to work in the absence of economic growth. So it's still money. I'm not talking about abolishing money, but it makes money much less of a dominating force in our lives. And it removes this compulsion to compete. And it removes this ever-present scarcity, the scarcity that never goes away because we're always in competition for never enough money. It changes that basic dynamic. Now, those of you with some economics knowledge will have all kinds of questions, like, would that cause inflation? How would banking work? What about cash? And all of these I discuss in a lot more detail in my book. It's not my idea, by the way. It goes back about 100 years. And so I'm drawing on a lot of economic thinkers. It's not an idea that you can just dismiss on trivial grounds, okay? I'm just saying that if you want more information about it, you can read my book, which is going to be in Turkish in a month or two. In some countries, in some Islamic countries, I'm told there's a practice called a zakat. How do you say it? Zakat? Yeah. Is that in Turkey too? Do they have that? Right? And the way it was explained to me is that every year you give away 3%. 1/40th? Okay, so 2.5%. 2.5% of your wealth. Right? Not of your income, of your wealth. Right? Of your wealth. Yeah. So really what the zakat, what the zakat is, it's a voluntary form of exactly what I'm talking about. So this proposal basically is saying, let's make the zakat built into the system so that wealth flows away from accumulation. The more it flows, the more abundance there is for everybody. So that's just one idea that I write about. And there are some other ones too. Another one is, we'll still have money, but there's a lot of things that we can do for each other that we shouldn't use money for, because money separates us. If I suppose that suppose I come to Istanbul and I stay at your home and I meet your children and you cook me dinner and I sleep in your guest room. And then it's time for me to leave and I take out my wallet. Here, how much do I owe you for that? How would you feel? You'd feel bad. You'd feel like I insulted you. Because what I'm doing is I'm saying, I don't want to be connected to you. I don't want to owe you anything. I don't want to feel grateful. But if I don't pay you, and if it's just a gift, then when you come to America, you're going to say, hey, guess what, Charles, I'm coming to America. And you're going to expect me to say, oh, why don't you come stay at my house? Right? You're going to feel okay to ask me for something, and I'm going to want to give you something. So with a gift, the relationship is not over when you give a gift. It creates a relationship. But a money transaction does not create a relationship. A money transaction, we're done. You gave me something, I paid you, we're done. The more we live in a money world, the more we have no relationships. You don't need anybody because you can just pay somebody else. You can walk down the street. I don't need you, I don't need you, I don't need anybody. Even your friends, I don't really need you. You're not going to help me fix my toilet. You're not going to help me build my house. You're not going to plow my field if I break my leg. Right? I don't need anybody. And that is a very painful way to live. So another thing I write about and I talk about, and Zumbara is really doing this in practical ways, is to say, okay, some things, not everything, but some things we're not going to do with money anymore. We're going to find other ways to meet each other's needs, ways that build relationships so that we're not alone in the world anymore, so that we're not these separate selves anymore. But we're going to build relationships, and we're going to reclaim some of life from money. We're going to take back some of life from the money realm. We're going to create community again. Does that mean that you will not use money for anything? No. I'm sure you will still pay for a cell phone or a computer or a car with money, but there are many things that we can do for each other. Maybe we don't even need so many cars if people share cars. Okay, so I'm just going to stop there for now and give you guys the chance to ask some questions because it's getting kind of late. Please, any questions?
The old and the ugly system and the transition to the new happy system. Will it be more easy for non-developed countries, or will it be more easy for the hardcore capitalist system to accomplish this transition? So the first is this, and the second one is imagine year 2017, 5 years later from now, and hopefully you are here again, and your system is very successful in the world. And what is the percentage you think that the communities in the world will successfully accomplish this transition? Thank you.
Yeah, okay. I think it will be easier for less developed countries to make the transition, and more difficult for developed countries, and especially difficult for the United States of America. Because in less developed countries, you haven't forgotten yet. You haven't forgotten what community is. The old ways are still in your living memory. Maybe the young people don't remember so much, but the older people do. That knowledge is still there of how to live together. Also, the connection to the land is still there. On Tuesday, I talked a little bit about the importance of permaculture and the importance of a different kind of technology that's not about dominating and controlling nature, but it's about creating together with nature. And traditional farming did that. You know, it was very much in tune with the land, with the seasons. People really understood the soil, you know. And so in America, we don't have that connection anymore, generally speaking. So we have a much bigger transition to make, a much harder transition. Ironically, the things that you really need for the future are exactly the things that are being swept away today with development and modernization. Those are the precious things that are being ignored and being converted into money, into markets, into consumption. But those are the important things. So as far as 2017, you know, I think that it's going to take a lot longer than that. Things, I believe, will get much worse before they get better. Because our habits are so strong that it will take a big breakdown to change our habits. And that takes some time. But I think that by 2017, even if things are worse, even if the world of money seems even stronger, underneath the surface, you'll be able to see the change happening more and more. You know, when a wave in the sea, when a wave comes to shore, the wave gets bigger and bigger, right? Right before it breaks, it's the biggest of all. But underneath, it's hollow. And that's what's happening now to the money system and to the whole, everything that goes along with it. It seems bigger than ever, but underneath it's getting hollow. Not only is it hollowing out the ecological basis of its survival, but also it's becoming hollow in our hearts too. Like no one really believes in it anymore. Not like we used to. Not as much. 50 years ago or 100 years ago, everybody believed in progress and conquering nature, and that technology was going to make a perfect world, and that humanity was going to conquer every disease and go to outer space and have flying cars and a perfect society through science. Everybody believed that 50 years ago, 100 years ago, but not anymore. Not anymore. So the psychological foundation is hollowing out also. But it'll take a little time. Yeah, thanks.
I am in the middle of the 40s. That means I was born in Istanbul, and when I was a child, there was a more sharing society around me. And then you told me before how people help each other doing something. Then when I was young, they called me like, we believe that kind of society, but the 80s, the economic system is changed drastically, and then our belief system also changed, and then they call me, you are a loser if you don't want to compete something to survive. Now you are saying that it will change again because it's the theme of changing of the psychology of money and possessing and sharing. This is, I think it seems to me that It's very important thing, but also very deep connection, because we are used to compete a lot of many years, and then we lived in the idea of surviving to beat the other one. How it is be possible in a certain time? I don't.
Yeah. Let's look at Greece for an example. Turkey and Greece are kind of brother and sister in a way, even though there was a lot of hatred before, but a lot of problems, but you're kind of stuck together, you know. And so now in Greece, everything's falling apart. And even if you try very hard to compete, even then, you still don't make it, right? So there's some really interesting things that are happening in Greece now. People have been telling me about, Ali was telling me about some of the things. One thing that's happening is that farmers have lots of food, but they can't sell it at a decent price. So they're stuck with all this food. Consumers, normal people, they are hungry, but they don't have any money to buy the food, or not enough. So now the farmers and the local people are creating direct connections where the local people might pay a very small price, maybe just the wholesale price, which is a tiny fraction of what it costs in the supermarket, right? So they're paying a very small price, and they also go to the farm and help out and help do the work. So they develop a connection with the farmer. And even though there's still money involved, it's a step toward a gift economy, because at least they're not paying anymore for distribution, marketing, trucking, you know, and buying things from far away. And so the ones that are doing well in Greece now are the ones that are stepping into cooperation. Apparently there's also time banks like Zumbarat that are starting in Greece. There's all kinds of stuff like that no one would even imagine it if things are working well. So I think people like you, who the whole time, part of you is resisting the world of competition, you know? And it's been lonely at times, because everybody says you're crazy. But that time is coming to an end. And you're going to have, you know, and the spirit that you're protecting will become very important, I think. Yeah.
Thank you. I don't want to use microphone.
Okay.
You can hear me?
Yeah.
Because I think you meant like open money, but I don't have to put, so is it main?
Çeviri yapılamıyormuş eğer kullanmasa. Bu da öyle diyor.
There would be no money without the possession. This way. Okay, so I will use microphone. I have to. Okay. And so the problem was like I want to like focus on is that. So is it the main problem money or possession? I said. Because I believe that there would be no money without the existence of possession. And the second thing I want to say, how do you see the role of technology like in the future or in the society that you are talking about? And so I'm not talking about the primitive technology like axe or hammer. They are for production. But the modern technology, which is for overproduction. Because overproduction brings overconsumption. And so I think there's a problem with that, with the development of technology. And the third thing I want to say, is that so the word of gift. So I didn't like the word of gift that much, because for giving a gift to someone, I have to own something. And the one that I give a gift has to like be lack of this thing. But I imagine the world that we will share, by the way, not by giving some gift to anyone. There's something that I don't own, no one owns. Just there is something and we use them. By the way, no one will give to anyone, just we will share them. And so like that's
Yeah.
all. Thank you.
So I think that some of the things you're talking about are part of a very, very long-term vision. Ultimately, property, just like money, is nothing but social agreements. It's an agreement about who gets to do what with the things of the world. And the system of property comes from the same place of separation as the system of money. So over the long term, I think that our system of money and property both will evolve to a point where it's unrecognizable. The second thing that you mentioned was, what was it again? Just technology. Yeah, and overproduction and stuff. Yeah. So part of the whole thing is the concept of work. This has been, so technology constantly allows us to do the same things much faster, right? It makes us more efficient, more productive. For example, 40 years ago, if you wanted to create a nice brochure, say a program for this conference, it would take a whole room full of people to do that. Copywriters and people with scissors and glue cutting things out, and then you have to send it to the printer, and it was very complicated. And now one person can do it on their computer in, a few days. So one would think, and this is happening in every realm of technology, less and less work is required to produce the same amount of stuff. So one would think that we would work less and less, right? Because we need less and less work to produce all this stuff. But why are we not working less and less? It's not because of technology. It's not a failure of technology. It's because instead of working less, we've always chosen to consume more instead. Why have we always chosen to consume more rather than to work less? That choice is dictated to us by the money system that always pushes growth. Growth means growth in consumption and growth in production. So the role of technology and the role of money are tightly linked together. And one thing that has to change is, well, there's other reasons why we keep working hard too. I'm not going to go into that. But I'll just say that one thing that needs to change is the role of work in society. Instead of consuming more, we're going to have to start to work less and to return to the attitude of traditional people, primitive people, toward time, where they didn't work that hard. Most people don't know this, but hunter-gatherers, they worked 20 hours a week on subsistence. They didn't struggle to survive. Their lives were very easy compared to ours. I mean, they were more physical, but there wasn't much stress. They were never busy. They worked 20 hours a week. Anthropologists were very surprised when they discovered this. They would. This one anthropologist I've read, Richard Lee, he went to the Kalahari Desert in southern Africa, and he was, learning a language and interacting with the people there, and he's like, these guys don't seem to be doing much work. So he got his notebook and he followed them around, writing down how much time they spent actually working. And it was like 20 hours a week, and not even the old people or the children. And the work was the women would go and they would be digging roots and chatting and singing, or the men would go out hunting maybe, which is what people do for fun today. And he's like, what happened to the struggle to survive? And it's not just hunter-gatherers, even subsistence farmers, peasants in, Anatolia. If there wasn't a sultan or a king or a governor or somebody taking most of their food, life was pretty easy for them too. And we can see a trace of that in traditional people everywhere, they still are in less of a hurry than we are. So one of the things that needs to change is our attitude toward work. And another thing I talk about in the book is the idea of a universal basic income, which is basically everybody gets paid a certain amount of money just to exist. But yeah, in the long term, like I'm discussing maybe the next few decades or the next century. I think in the long term, money and property will evolve into something unrecognizable. I mean, even property, like what is property anyway? You know, what is it to own a piece of land? It doesn't become attached to your body. You know, it's just people, basically, in America, it means everybody agrees that you can keep everybody else out. In Scandinavia, in Sweden, it doesn't mean that. In Scandinavia, you do not have a right to keep people out of your land because the land belongs to everybody. No human being made the land. God made the land, right? Or whatever, the universe made the land. No human being made the land, so why should any human being be able to keep other human beings out? So in Scandinavia, everybody has a right to go on every land in the whole country, to hike, to pick berries, to whatever, right? So I think that our system of property is going to change also when we begin to see ourselves as not separate and as part of nature and everything. Yeah, so thank you. Maybe a couple more? Yeah? Or let's actually, if we can alternate man, woman, so that we can get a good balance here. Well, that's okay.
After your talk on Tuesday, one of the talks from, I think it was Vodafone, was talking about the pressures that will be, not the pressures, but they were just talking about the graphs of number of electronic devices as just one example. And they were saying that now there are 5.5 billion electronic devices, you know, phones and communication devices. And that the projection is that by 2020, which isn't that far away, that number is going to grow conservatively to 25 billion and maybe to 50 billion. And that I guess as, you know, our population increases and all of our current economic paradigms increase, that juxtaposition between the drive for our connectedness through gifting is going to come in very dramatic contrast to that sort of a growth curve in terms of increased market pressures, and that's happening, you know, in all resources as well.
Yeah.
Can you just talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so we could have
drama.
So yeah, he was saying, you know, these projections we're going to have, you know, 50 billion electronic devices in, what was it, 2020? Yeah. That doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to spend 10 times more money on those devices. The dynamics of overproduction and underconsumption that are a problem in capitalism aren't going to go away. So I don't know. I mean, part of me is like, you know, so what? That we're going to have all these electronic devices. Is it really going to change our lives? And I don't think it's going to solve our economic problem either. Just because they're becoming so much cheaper, you know? But I don't know, like, I mean, I guess I could take that in different ways. Oh yeah. Right, yeah. Yeah, I mean, ultimately, right, so to make electronic devices, you need rare earth minerals that are mined in, like, the Congo, you know. Basically, they're mined in places where there's still rainforests that need to be cut down, indigenous people that need to be exterminated, and then you can go and mine the things, and it causes terrible environmental damage also. And we're running out of these things. So ultimately, like, part of the whole picture and part of the transition to a gift-based economy or an ecological economy is that we're going to have to design things so that they're completely reusable. No species in nature creates waste that's unusable for every other species. Right? And we've got to, if we're going to enter into an ecological age, we have to be the same. So we have to design things so that when we're done with them, they can be reused, and we have to create economic incentives to make that happen. So for example, there could be a very high deposit on manufactured goods. So you only get your deposit back when it's recycled for real. Like a lot of stuff is recycled today, but it's not really recycled, you know. Like glass bottles, for example, they should be reused. And it's not hard to set up a system where instead of buying a plastic bottle of water or even a glass bottle, you take your bottles to the station and they refill them, you know. That's easy to implement. But today the plastic bottles are artificially cheap. So part of the whole thing is, I didn't talk about it today, but we need to change the way that money works and the way that taxation works so that it becomes very expensive to make new stuff. We have to make it so expensive that we don't do that beyond the limits of the earth to sustain. I'm not sure how much I want to get into it now because I'm getting hungry. But ultimately, we want to have a world where service to the planet, there's also money in doing that, where money isn't a force that pushes you away from service to society or service to the planet. Because money ultimately should be the embodiment of society's gratitude. You know, money should, and it should be a signal, like that here's what we need, here's what we will be grateful for. Ultimately, money should be a token of gratitude. Saying, oh, you've done the work that we appreciate here. Here's a token of our gratitude. And then having this token of gratitude, people will look at you and say, oh, you're somebody who's done me some good. So I want to be generous to you too. Like that's like, because sometimes people say, well, why should we have money at all in a more beautiful world? Why should we even have money? Maybe we should just get rid of money entirely. But I think that in every institution of the modern age, there's a little spark of something beautiful, a little spark of what it is supposed to be. You know, even the police, you know, even like everything, there's a little spark. Like I could talk about what a police does in a more beautiful world. But anyway, yeah, thanks. So two more, and I want a woman first, and then maybe another man. Yeah.
I think money is just another way to have power. I think what makes the world or the age right now is the will to have power. I mean, but if we get rid of money, there are other ways to have power. For example, right now you are in a more powerful position than me because you are standing there and giving the speech. And this makes your ideas more powerful than mine, for example, or other people around here. So what do you think about democracy and consensus decision making? I think it's very important in the age of transition.
Yeah, absolutely. You're right. If we just changed the money system and nothing else, then the place where the money system comes from, if that doesn't change, then nothing will really change. So you're calling it the will to power. Where does the will to power come from? Where does the desire to dominate other people and control other people come from? I think it comes from our experience of self as being separate. From that story that answers the question, who are you? And if we're living in the felt experience of separation, and if the answer to the question, who are you, is you're this separate being among other separate beings in a world separate from you, if that's the answer, then you're going to have a will to power, because this universe out there is unfriendly. It doesn't care about you. The forces of nature don't care about you. Other people don't care about you. They're in competition with you. So of course you want power then. So the will to power is one consequence, one expression of our self, our story of self, not the true self, but the story of self. The money system is another expression of it. Our medical system is an expression of it. Our political system is an expression of it. Our educational system is an expression of it. They're all coming from the same source of separation. So I've been talking about money, but I could talk about any other of these systems and get to the same place. And they are all going to change, and they all are already changing, including the model of one speaker after another all day, while 99% of the people are just sitting in chairs passively. Like, that feels more and more obsolete to me. I don't know, like, I find most speakers really boring, actually. I don't have much patience for it, but I do think that there is a place in the world to listen to a really good storyteller or something. I enjoy that sometimes. So I think like a lot of things, this model of one guy up here at the center of everybody's attention, I think that is used too much. But it maybe has a small place. Just like money is used too much, but it has a small place. And logic, reason, calculation, linear thinking, it's used too much, but it has its place too. So I see that we're going to come back into balance. Yeah. One more. Just, how about this guy here?
Thank you. At the beginning of your speech, you mentioned about the pitfalls and danger of creating new services and products.
Yeah.
What's wrong with that?
Okay. What's wrong with creating new services and products? Nothing's necessarily wrong with it. I think we will always explore new things, create new forms of art. We have, I think, every capacity of a human being, every gift of a human being has a purpose. So I'm not anti-technology, but I think that we need to recognize that the underlying dynamic, the driver of creating so many goods and services that don't really serve human happiness. What's causing that to happen? Why do we create so many things that don't actually make people happier? There's something else going on. It's not just that we're meeting people's needs. We're often meeting needs that only exist because of technology, because of I mentioned the business plan. You take something away and you sell it back again. So I think that I'm not saying that we should stop innovating or stop being creative. And in fact, there are many directions of technology that are really important now to living sustainably on Earth. What I'm cautioning against is the blind assumption that we are meeting more and more needs. An economist would say that anytime a good or service is transacted, that a need is being met, because you wouldn't pay for it, or a desire is being fulfilled, right? Because you wouldn't pay for it if you didn't want it, right? You wouldn't pay whatever, 10 lira for something, if it were not better than anything else you could get for 10 lira. That's what an economist says. Therefore, the economist says the more things are being bought, the better off everybody is. But we have to understand that the things, the goods and services that we buy might not be something new. They might be a compensation, a substitute for something that's lost. And sometimes the thing that's lost is something that you cannot satisfy with anything you can buy with money. For example, when we lose our connection to community, we lose our, remember I talked about that sense of identity that you get from really knowing people, and they really know you. In a traditional village, every person knows your stories. Every person knows the first time you fell in love. Every person remembers when you fell out of the tree and you almost died. And you know their stories too, and you know their parents and their grandparents and their children's stories. And everybody knows, you feel at home in the universe. You know who you are. And when that's taken away, then a person feels no longer at home in the universe. And then they have an insatiable hunger for connection. And shopping gives a momentary experience of connection. Or pornography gives a momentary experience of connection. Or getting drunk, maybe. And you feel good for a few moments. But it doesn't really meet the need for connection. So I think we have to, when we ask what's wrong with goods and services, we have to ask, well, where is the desire for these coming from? For these endless consumer goods that are destroying the planet? You know, where is that coming from? Is it meeting a real need, or is it compensating for something that's lost? What we're doing is we're losing the infinite, and we're losing the sacred, and we're substituting the finite. So you can buy 10,000 songs on your iPod, but no amount of songs will be the same as your lover singing a song to you, or somebody really singing to you. Maybe sometimes you've been to a concert or heard music where someone's really singing to the audience and there's that connection. It's amazing, and no amount of money can buy that. You can't pay somebody to really care. You can't pay somebody to really be connected to you. That's something that's sacred and infinite. And what has happened in modern life is that we're getting more and more and more of things that are not sacred, of things that are just a quantity, and less and less and less of the things that we really need to be happy human beings. So I think we'll end with that. I think it's a bit past 7:30. I'll hang around a little while longer, and I really would like to come back to Istanbul someday. I'm going to be in Greece, I think, next spring, and maybe I'll stop by here too. So thank you all very much.